So let's look at some of the more common questions that learners have been asking me recently, both in my emails and in the comments section of my YouTube videos. The first question is about the warning lights that may or may not come on your car. Let's look at this light here. This is usually known as an engine management light. It could indicate a blocked filter, it could indicate there's some problem with emissions, or maybe there's some issue with a sensor. A couple of learners have expressed concern about this light coming on in the days and weeks before their driving test. If you have this warning light on your dashboard, then there's every chance your test will be cancelled. It's up to you and your responsibility to make sure that your car is in good condition. Anything that may compromise that could lead to your test being cancelled. A couple of years ago, I had a learner driver who had this light on his car, and he was somehow taken out on his test, even though I advised him against it. Now, either the tester didn't see it or he didn't care too much. I'm not sure, but he managed to go out on his test anyway. So it can depend on the individual tester. There is a certain amount of discretion depending on the warning light. But you must always be prepared to have your test cancelled if you see a warning light on your dashboard. Now, I wish I could be more specific. I wish I had a booklet or a sheet that I could share with you that would indicate the lights that are accepted and the lights that are not accepted. But unfortunately, the RSA don't tell us anything, so we don't know. I get my information from other instructors and from hearing from you folks in Facebook groups, for example, like that. So it can depend on the tester, as I said, but don't take any chances. Make sure your car is up to scratch, make sure it's in good order, and no warning lights on your dashboard. Some learners are concerned about their level of English. So I got an email about a week ago from a learner saying that while he can speak reasonably good English, sometimes the way he articulates the answers to the questions and the road signs is not perfect. It could be jumbled up, and he's just concerned how that might come across. So please bear in mind that there's a lot of people who will be doing their test and English is not their first language, okay? The testers are used to this, they're comfortable with this, and for the vast majority of cases, the testers will be understanding of these certain linguistic limitations you have, okay? As long as you get the general message across and you do your best to answer the question efficiently, then you'll be fine. Remember, this is a driving test, not a language test. The next question is about these things here, sunglasses. Are you allowed to wear your sunglasses in the driving test? The answer is yes, you are, in order to make your drive more comfortable and in order to protect your eyes. I guess a lot of learners are concerned about wearing sunglasses because they might have certain misconceptions that if they're wearing these things, then the tester might not see them doing their mirror checks. If you're doing the mirror checks, you will be seen by the testers, okay? They are professionally trained, so give them some credit. You're going to be looking like this, or that, or that. So there will be a little bit of a head movement, and sometimes there's a little gap here that they'll see through anyway, depending on their seating position, okay? But you do not have to give any exaggerated or flamboyant movements of the head like this in order to show the tester that you're checking your mirrors. That is not required. The tester just wants you to drive in a practical, realistic and safe way, with or without the sunglasses. I regularly get asked the following question in the comments and in my emails. If I have a full green light like this is a full green, which means it's shaped in a circular shape. If I have the full green light, am I okay to take my right turn, or do I have to wait until the filter arrow comes on? This here is the filter arrow, okay? Now the answer is you can take the right turn, so the blue car can take the right turn here on the full green light, as long as it's safe to do so, and as long as there's no oncoming cars here. At the very least, on the full green light, the blue car should roll up into the middle, like that, wait for any oncoming cars that have priority, and then proceed and take the turn once it's safe to do so on the full green light. Now, if the arrow comes on, that's great. That means these cars will have to stop and you'll have a free run in at it then. But you don't have to wait for the filter as long as it's safe to do so. Some people ask about rolling up. Normally just one car is enough to roll up, because if you're the second car and you roll up, you could get caught on a pedestrian crossing, or you could get caught on a cycle bay or something like that. It does depend on the junction, but normally one car is enough to roll up into the middle. So make sure you know the rule around turning right at traffic lights. It's very, very important, because if you don't, and you have certain misunderstandings about it, well, then you could end up losing marks on progress at lights. I got an email a few weeks ago from a learner who said she lost marks on observation on her driving test. And she was very confused and disappointed by this because she was absolutely convinced that she was getting the mirror checks as required, before indicating, before changing lanes, moving off, all that kind of stuff. But you see, mirrors and observation are generally marked differently. They're related, but they're not the same thing. So mirrors is a separate category on the sheet, and observation is a separate category on your driving test report sheet. They're two separate things. Mirrors is usually about what's behind you, whereas observation is more what's in front of you or what's on the main road. So if you take this example here, moving off. A lot of people lose marks on observation moving off. Now, this is not usually to do with checking the mirrors moving off. It's usually to do with not getting a proper blind spot, like over the right shoulder, so you have a proper shoulder check. And let's say they don't do the blind spot, or they let it go out of date. They might lose marks there on that then. At a junction, you will be likely to lose marks at a T-junction if you hold back and don't creep out to get into a better position so you can see. So if you stay in the one position and keep looking, even though you're partially blinded on one or both sides, that could be a mark on observation because you're not getting out and you're not creeping out for a better view. If you're at a junction and you're just staring the one way all the time like this, and you're not giving balanced looks both sides at a T-junction, say turning left or turning right, that could be a mark on observation. So it's about looking ahead, like looking on the main road. And then on a roundabout as well, like if you're not previewing the roundabout like this on the way down, like getting looks in and keeping the looks regular, that could be a mark on observation, okay? So just try and be aware of the differences between observation and mirrors, and just email me, danetai@gmail.com, if you have any confusion about your driving test report sheet. So the next point is not necessarily a question I was asked, but it's something that came up in our driving instructors Facebook group. A learner driver was insured by AXA. They sent him out a disc that was round and it didn't have the green band on the side. When he turned up for his driving test, the tester said that this insurance disc is not acceptable, and he cancelled the test and he ended up losing his fee. So if you're doing a driving test, make sure you have a proper, valid and in-date insurance disc. It should be square and it should have the green band along the side. Even though his car was insured fine, and even though it would be accepted by the Gardaí, it's not going to be accepted in the driving test. So make sure your green band is on display, and whatever you do, don't cut it off to make it fit in the holder. The next question I got was a couple of days ago from a learner driver who has some trouble staying in the proper position on the straight. Her question was the following: how do I avoid drifting to the centre of the road? I find it difficult to judge sometimes. Now in this case, it's important to make a note of what kind of road you're on. If it's a narrow lane, then stay central, and that should solve your issues there. But if it's a wider lane, this is where the problems usually arise. So on a wider lane, check your left mirror every now and then, and try not to have a big gap between the left door handle and the curb like here. Try and have a smaller gap like this. This will help regulate your position on the straight, and hopefully it'll help keep you in a more left of centre position on the wider lanes. Another recent question I got was about speed limits. A learner from Carlow said that there's not a lot of speed limit signs in Carlow, and sometimes he's not sure about which speed to go, and he asked me had I any advice for him. Well, it's going to depend on the road, and the general advice is if on shore, in town, then think of the speed limit as 50 kilometers. But more importantly, drive in a way that reflects the conditions, and that means bearing in mind the surface, the existence of speed bumps, hazards, etc. on the road. The more out of town you get, then you are probably more likely to encounter a 60 kilometer speed limit. And in housing estates, it's possible that you could have the special 30 kilometer speed limit, especially in housing estates that are small, narrow, tight, and that are in cul-de-sacs. Keep an eye out for speed limit signs, but don't let this define your driving in your test. Another common and understandable question I get asked is, Are you allowed to cross the solid white line here to overtake an obstruction, like a slow vehicle, for example, a cyclist or a tractor? And the answer is yes, you are allowed to cross the continuous white line in order to overtake a cyclist, tractor, or something similar. You see, if it's a slow vehicle like I described, then you don't need the same amount of clearance from oncoming cars as you would need, for example, if the hazard you were overtaking was moving faster. So it can be done safer on a solid white line, but only once it's safe to do so. You have to make a judgment in the moment. And remember, if in doubt, just hold back and wait until you have a clearer view of the road ahead. Bear in mind, a good driver needs to be practical and show flexibility at certain times. Another learner then asked me about parking. And this comes up quite a bit actually. In the Irish driving test, the only times you'll be asked to park in general will be on the left-hand side. For example, before your hill start, before your turnabout, before your reverse, and maybe one or two other times as well if the tester wants to test you moving off. There is no requirement to do parallel parking or bay parking in the driving test at the moment, at the time of making this video in 2023. That may change in future, but not at the moment. But you may have to do some form of parking at the test centre as you finish up your driving test. So at the end of the test, when you're going into the test centre like I am here in the Wexford test centre, I check my mirrors, I'd indicate, okay? Now I'm just going to slow down here and I'm going to pop her into first gear here because there's a little bit of a rise here on the footpath and it just allows me to be extra careful here. Now the idea is to go front ways into the parking space like this, okay? Just nice and straight like that. And then I straighten up the wheel like this. And then I go handbrake and then neutral. And then I turn off the engine. And as soon as I turn off the engine then just put it into first gear. And make sure then as well that you check your mirror and your shoulder just before you open the door to get out. Because these safety features or these safety actions are going to look good in the eyes of the tester and it's going to show that you're a safe, careful and conscientious driver. So at the end of the test, just drive straight into the parking space like this. There should be no requirement to reverse. Although if you have to reverse, well then that's another story. So if you do have to reverse in, try and give yourself the best angle like this and make sure that you put your handbrake up first into reverse, especially if it's on a hill. Good look around here like this then, using your mirrors and your shoulders, because a lot of people when they're reversing in at the end, if they are reversing, and like I say, it is a rarity, but if they are reversing in, they tend to kind of look in the mirrors all the time like this, and that's poor observation because you have to be looking out behind you like this, as well as in the three mirrors and shoulders like that, okay? Keep it going nice and slow. Try to have a gap, an equal gap on both sides between the door handle and the white line there, and the door handle and the white line there in either mirror. An equal gap. Once you have that done, then a nice straight wheel and back you go. It is very, very unusual that you will be asked to reverse into a space after a test, but if you think based on your test centre that it might happen, then try practice it and get used to it. And remember, yes, look in your mirrors, but don't look there all the time. You have to look over your shoulders as well for better all-round observation when parking if you are doing this at the end of your test. Another question that came up recently from a learner driver was about the speed and the gear. For example, he was wondering at what speed should I go to second gear? Is there a certain speed like 20 or 30 or whatever like that you need to go to second gear at? And then he was also asking about what if the car struggles at a slow speed in second gear? Are you allowed to put the clutch in and go into first gear? Look, the answer to this question is it's going to depend on the car and you have to drive in a way that suits the car, as I'll explain here. So a lot of people have asked about gears and speed and all that kind of stuff. Like in my car here, I'm accelerating now, I'm in first gear, okay? Now, I know in this car that when I just get below 20, say 18, 19, that's the time then to go to second gear, okay? And once I'm in second gear then, I can go very slow, but once I get to 15 kilometers like I am now, 14, 15 kilometers, that's when it starts to struggle. So any slower than that, I have to go into first gear then, otherwise it'll start to shudder and struggle. So when people ask me about what gear for what speed in terms of first and second gear, the honest answer is it's going to depend on the car, because all cars are different. Some cars like mine would be, you'll manage 15 kilometers in second gear, but other cars you'll have to do, you know, a little bit less or a little bit more. It's all about you yourself making that judgment so that your car is comfortable when you drive it and so that it doesn't struggle. So it just depends on the car, that's the honest answer. So if you found this video useful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you have any advice or tips to share, then why not let us know in the comments section, because other learners will benefit from that. I'll be back very soon with another video, hopefully Sunday evening with a live stream, and I'll talk to you then. Best of luck if you're doing a driving test. Safe travels. Slán go fóill.